Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Vered Kogan, and it is a huge honor to introduce you to the Reverend Dr. Jane Lewis. Jane is a certified neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP trainer, and a teacher of Huna, which is the spiritual, energetic, and shamanistic practices of the ancient Hawaiians. She has been teaching Huna in Hawaii and the UK since 2005, and she is a kumu, which is like an honorary PhD of Huna. And that is how I personally met Jane. She has been one of my kumus for the past few years. Jane also has an academic PhD focused on spirituality and leadership, with a particular focus on Huna. And she specializes in coaching and teaching people to let go of the blocks that hold them back from living their best, most fulfilled life. One of her superpowers is channeling profound meditations and visualizations for groups and individuals, such as moon meditations, Hawaiian meditations, peace meditations, and more. And Jane is currently completing her book on forgiveness, which is largely influenced by everything that she has learned from Huna. And Jane, really with all of my heart, I'm so grateful to you for all that you have given to me, personally, and for being here on the show and sharing these timeless principles with our audience. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I would love for our viewers to hear, our listeners to hear, how did you get into Huna? How were you introduced to this incredible world?
Well, originally, actually, it was through NLP. So I had clinical depression in the 1990s. I was in my mid 40s, and I had clinical depression, and I didn't want to do the drugs. So I looked around for non-pharmaceutical interventions, and I tried all sorts of things. And on my journey was told about neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. So I interviewed a lot of NLP trainers. And the one that I finally decided to go with, he taught NLP. And this was back in the days when headed note paper, it was paper brochures, and his paper brochure at the top, it said NLP, timeline therapy, and I could understand what that might be. Hypnosis, I thought, well, that's cool. And then this thing called Huna, and I wasn't interested. I just like, oh yeah, okay, fine. So I started with the NLP, which really gave me control over my thinking and really started to change the way I thought about myself on the inside, which started my journey out of clinical depression. And then he would talk about Huna, and I became more and more interested. And there was a couple of basic Huna techniques that he taught us, which really are the bedrock of Huna practice. And they became so important to me in maintaining my state once I got control of my thinking, maintaining my state and maintaining myself in a non-depressed state, in a much happier state. So Huna's done that for me. And the first time I went, I was only ever going to go once, and it was because it was Hawaii. And I hadn't been in Hawaii. I've been to Polynesia, but not Hawaii. And it was tax deductible. And I'm an Elvis fan. So, it's like ticks all the boxes. So that's really how I started. And then I went once. I loved it. I loved what was going on. I didn't really understand half of it, but I loved it. And I thought, well, I'll come back one more time, because there was one more thing that I wanted, which would enable me to work with other people. And I went back the one more time, and then I went back one more time, and one more time, one more time. So I think I've been about 42 times, something like that, to Hawaii. And then started to teach it in a very small way, little day or weekend things in the UK, because I had permission to do that. And then in 2005, started teaching Fukumumat in Hawaii. And now I run my own Huna trainings, again, with permission in the UK. So longer ones for a 5-day 5-day retreats, workshops. So that's been my journey, and it's an ongoing journey. And I made so many really deep friendships through Huna. Here I am in the UK, and I've got people literally all around the world who I've met through Huna and who are very, very dear to me. So I feel very blessed.
Thank you for sharing that story. I think many people find themselves in times in their life where it's in a dip, if you will, right? Maybe they're struggling, maybe they're feeling lonely, maybe they are, depressed, anxious, whatever that might be. And I really honor you for being open to exploring many ways to self-heal and grow. And so what exactly is Huna?
It's a good question. And it's a good question for several reasons. The first is that there are probably as many different versions of Huna as there are Hawaiian families in the islands. So there are different lineages. And the Huna it's not the best name. It's the one we've adopted, but it's not actually the best name. It is a Hawaiian word. It means secret. But it was given to the practices, and I don't think he really knew what the practices were, but he saw these practices going on by a guy called Max Freedom Long, and he gave it these practices the name Huna because people wouldn't talk to him about what the practices were. So really what they were was a whole cultural approach, not just a spiritual approach, but a whole way of being, a whole cultural way of being. But they included spiritual, energetic, shamanic, and healing approaches. There's a lot in Huna. We talk a lot about energy. Energy really is at the heart of it, because energy is at the heart of everything. The ancients have known it for thousands of years, not just the Hawaiian ancients, but the Taoist system. You look at any system around the world, they talk about energy. And finally, modern science has caught up and managed to prove that that everything is energy. So at the very, very heart of it, it's about energetic practices. So we work energetically with the elements there. And in the Huna system, there are 4 elements. So air, fire, earth, and water. And then the 5th one is spirit, kave, or spirit. So we work energetically. We learn to really tune into the elements and utilize the elements and make them part of us and part of our practice. We learn how to direct or flow energy. The lineage that I just feel, we're so blessed to be part of. But the lineage that we're blessed to be part of, one part of the lineage is a system, an energy system. I suppose it's similar to Reiki. It has parallels with Reiki. And it is connected to the highest feminine energy on the planet. And the opua, the symbols are, if you think of a diamond, and it has all those faces, are really, all the faces on a diamond. So the diamond of the highest feminine energy on the planet has 36 faces, 36 symbols. And we work a lot with this because it's so powerful for healing work, for change work, for transformational work. It's powerful on many, many different levels. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is Ho'oponopono, which many people have heard of nowadays, thanks to the work of Joe Vitale. The version we work with is our Ho'oponopono lineage is a little different, but it's the same because it's all the same. It all comes from the same place. So we work with Ho'oponopono. We work with specific techniques for releasing mental, emotional, spiritual baggage. You can do physical healing work. Myself, I don't do as much physical healing work as mental and emotional, but there are plenty of Huna practitioners and practitioners in our group who do physical healing work. So it really covers a whole depth and breadth of practice. It's a very complete system. Oh, and we have dream time. So we teach going into the dream with chant and drums. There's a herbal tradition. We don't include it in our Huna practice, but there is a herbal tradition. And it's so, yeah, it has this extraordinary breadth and depth. And then there is just the getting to know your higher self, getting to know your connection with source, with spirit, and getting really in touch with who you are and the authentic, the core of who you are. That's one of the things that Huna has enabled me to do, to become true to myself and to have that deep connection with myself and with others. Because certainly clinical depression, one of the things that a lot of people do when they're clinically depressed is cut themselves off. I used to say it was like living in an igloo. So yeah, it brings connection, and it brings that real depth of knowledge and groundedness in who you are.
You know, Jane, one of the things that I've also learned personally is that, there's these 4 domains, right, of resilience, if you will, right, of energy. There's the physical, there's the mental, the emotional, and spiritual. And personally, the spiritual side for me was never one of focus. It was mostly the mental, right, maybe mental, physical, but it didn't used to be. And then I got trained in NLP, and I got really well versed in the integration of our conscious and unconscious mind. And when after I became a trainer of NLP and I began to study Huna, I began to connect with the, what we would call the higher mind, the higher self, the infinite timeless self, the higher mind. And for me, that has made a tremendous impact in my connection with myself, my connection with others, my connection with my deeper purpose, the meaning of things. And I truly believe that it has transformed my perception of life. And so tell us a little bit more about kind of that higher mind or the higher self. What do we mean by that?
So I think it's worth prefacing it with the idea that the Polynesian cultures don't separate out the spiritual from the rest. We do that in the West. We go, well, there's spirituality over there and there's me here. But in most Polynesian cultures, they don't make that separation. And in the Hawaiian culture, that's also true. We're just inherently spiritual beings. So when we talk about the higher self is this connection to source. I suppose it's a sort of channel to source or a connection to source. It's a non-judgmental parental spirit. So your higher self doesn't judge you. It believes you're perfect. It holds the blueprint of perfect health. So if you want to do physical healing or emotional and mental healing or spiritual healing, although I take the view that most people, it's not about spiritual healing. Most people at a spiritual level are healed, but it's the physical and the emotional and the mental that need help. But that's my take on it. So it doesn't judge you. It will guide you, but you have free will. So it guides you when you ask it. It doesn't interfere. And it's, as I say, it's a sort of a conduit to source. One of the things in the system in our lineage is, one of the ideas is that the higher self, we have 3 minds. So we have the conscious mind, which is like the captain of the ship, says where we're going, sets the, or in a corporate sense, because I know quite a few of your listeners are from a business background. It sets the target, sets the vision and the targets. And then we have the unconscious mind, which really gets on and does the job, and is responsible for our particularly for keeping us safe and alive, and for looking after our memories and presenting our memories when it thinks we need to resolve issues. The higher self then is the third one. Now, the higher self in our lineage doesn't talk directly to the conscious mind. It only talks directly to the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind thinks in symbols. That's how it operates. It's symbolic. And so the higher self sends its symbols to the unconscious mind. And then to get the meaning, the conscious mind has to interpret them in some way. And that's how dreams and dream interpretation work in the Huna system of our lineage, that a dream is a message from the higher self that it sends to the unconscious mind in symbolic form. And then it's the job of the conscious mind to do that interpretation. So the higher self, it does send us messages. It does care for us. And it, as I say, generally doesn't step in unless we ask. Although sometimes if you're really, really under threat and it's not your time to go yet, the higher self may step in.
So you mentioned also earlier the elements. So we've got, air, water, fire, earth, and you mentioned kind of spirit, or what we call in the lineage Keave. Tell us a little bit more about the elements and how our listeners can utilize the energy of the elements to support them in their day-to-day life.
Well, let's start with fire. I'm a Leo, so I would always start with fire. Leo and a Sagittarius rising. I'm all fire. So let's start with fire. So the fire, and we're talking metaphysical elements. These are not the physical elements. It's not go and stick your hand in a fire. That would be a bad idea. It's not that. These are, as I say, they're beyond physical. They're metaphysical. So the qualities of fire is it's the yang, it's the masculine. So it's got passion, motivation, get up and go. It's the warrior energy, or the warrioress for women. It's that real kind of achievement and drive. When you utilize your fire, when you become connected with the fire energy, if you're feeling a little bit lacking in passion and get up and go, connecting with the fire energy in all its gloriousness can fire you up and get you going and put you into that energy when you're perhaps feeling a little bit more earthy or a bit more watery. So we can use each element has its qualities, and we can use those qualities when we make friends with the element, when we have a good connected relationship with the element. We can then utilize the qualities of the element and the element itself. Earth, for example. Earth is about stability and foundation and groundedness and security, and the nurturingness. It's Mother Earth. It's that kind of energy. And when we're feeling a bit wobbly, lacking in self-confidence, doubting ourselves, if we have a really good connection with the earth energy, and we draw on the earth energy, and we draw up the earth energy, or go and hug a tree and literally tune into or lean against a tree if you don't want to hug it, lean into the energy, then we can draw on that energy to bring us back to our roots, back to our foundation. So each of the elements has qualities that, as we know the element and we know its qualities, we can draw on that when we need it.
So you mentioned earth and fire. Would you be willing to share a little bit about the three others?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So water is it's the yin, it's the feminine. And if you think about water can be very still, it can be gently moving, and it can be a raging torrent. Mm-hmm. So it is the domain of the emotions, and many people can show that full range from still to raging torrent. It's nurturing, whereas earth is nurturing in terms of it feeds you. The water is nurturing more in terms of healing and repairing. So it's got that soothing, that soothing feeling. So if you're out of sorts, you can tune into the water element to just bring you that, it's that feeling, that sort of hug. It's like a watery hug. And certainly when we, in the Huna workshops, we teach people how to do healing with the elements, with other people, with themselves and with other people. And a huge part of the healing piece is connecting with the water element. So you use the fire element to blast out what needs to be, to get rid of, to clear out what needs to be cleared. And then you bring in the water element for, say, soothing and the actual healing process. Then air. So air is the mental plane. So air is very much about thought and mental processes. So it's got a light feeling. It's got an intelligence about it. So when we tune in, when we're wanting to be more mental, because being in your head is not necessarily bad. It's when you're in your head all the time that it gets to be a problem. So when we want to access that more mental, intellectual thinking processes, then the air element, the logic, the rationality, then the air element is a good element to tune into. And then the fifth one, Keawe. Keawe is spirit or source. It's pre-Big Bang. And it's the point at which everything is possible. It's pure possibility, pure truth, pure light and pure dark, pure truth and pure untruth, because it holds the potential for both sides of everything. So it's the place where everything is true and everything's not true. And everything emanates from source. So the elements ultimately have emanated from source. Our higher selves and in fact, the rest of our being, but our higher selves, they emanate from source. And when we connect with our higher self is our connection to source. So when we connect with our higher self, we connect up to source, and that deep energy. And you can use that deep energy because source is also the place of creation. It's where creation happens. It's also the place where uncreation happens, because or the opposites, the potential for the opposites are held there. So if you have a way of thinking and you want to change it, and you know how, you can dissolve that way of thinking in source and then create a new way of thinking.
And one of the ways that that's done in Huna is through a process called the Keawe process. And this was in my very first Huna training. As you know, I'm a level 3, what's called a level 3. So when I did the level 1 training, there was an opportunity, as you know, to have a volunteer from the audience, one of the students, be part of a demonstration. Mm-hmm. And Jane, I was the one selected for that demonstration out of a very large group of students. And I had such a profound, undeniable experience that had immediate effects in my life. Within 45 minutes after I did that, something completely unexpected and delightful happened. And it was so undeniable. And so I said, what is this stuff? Right? What is this stuff? Right? And I said, I got to come back for level 2. So I went to Hawaii, spent another couple of weeks in Hawaii the next year. And then, of course, this past September. And I use these techniques with clients. So just yesterday, I had a client in my office. She's a leader, and a leader in her community and in many other ways. And she had this harmony this dichotomy in her life that was out of harmony, where a part of her felt very empowered and very significant. She's a very empowered individual. And yet there was this part of her that felt unseen, insignificant, unimportant, and so on. And so we did the Keawe process where she got to really be with these different parts of herself. As you said, the truth and the not truth at the same time. And then she was able to, quote, dissolve those dichotomies into what we call source, right? People can call that love, the universe, spirit, God, whatever they want to call that. And she had such a profound experience as well. I mean, and my whole body was just tingling with energy as she was doing it. It was incredible. She said this was, one of the most profound experiences that she's had. And so the reason I share this is because my personal connection with higher self has shifted quite a bit through these teachings and truthfully through experiences that I've had, because it's one of those things that you can't necessarily get from science. You only get from experience, in terms of true belief of it. So one of the things that comes up sometimes with clients in the corporate world is this concept of forgiveness. And I know that that's one of your areas of expertise. You've brought up Ho'oponopono, and I know you're writing a book about this. What do people need to know as it relates to forgiveness in the professional arena?
I think the number one thing is the importance of forgiveness. Forgiveness is as important in the business world, in the corporate world, as it is in your personal life, as it is in the world as a whole. Particularly given the world that we're living in at the moment. There's a couple of things that can happen. Businesses that are forgiving, as in they accept the fact that we're all human and we all make mistakes, and that mistakes can be forgiven, tend to retain staff more easily than businesses who assume that everything must be perfect and people are punished for anything less than 100% perfection, which basically means that most people are going to be punished quite a lot of the time in different ways. And it may be as extreme as sacking them, or it may be simply comments that are made, things that erode their confidence. It's almost like there's a vicious cycle that goes on where somebody makes a mistake, they aren't sacked, but laid off, sacked, as we say in the UK. It's not bad enough for that, but the boss has a word, and the word, and it's a stern word, and it was, you've got to do better, you're foolish. That starts to erode the person's self-confidence. They're more likely to make mistakes. They become more stressed, because when we either don't forgive others or we don't forgive ourselves, it becomes deeply, deeply stressful. And we all know what stress does to the body. That's a subject, I'm sure, for a different day, but we all know the impact of stress on the body. The other thing that can happen is that, particularly, the stern word, you should be perfect, you should be doing this much better, can trigger old traumas as well. Now, the forgiveness work that I do and I teach is very much about with Ho'oponopono, which is the forgiveness process that people know the name, but there are many different versions of it, because, as I say, there's many different lineages. With Ho'oponopono, you forgive other people, and it's really liberating, because when you do forgive other people, you open yourself up to so much more possibility. And that is as true in the business environment as it is in the personal environment. But it is that idea that when we let go of the hurt, the revenge, and the anger, and all the other things that go with, they did that to me, it's so liberating, it's so freeing, and so empowering. And from a business perspective, if you have a culture of forgiveness rather than a culture of blame, you've got a much healthier culture on your hands.
So how can leaders do this? How can they embrace more of that mindset and spread that culturally, or more of that forgiveness type of culture?
I think one step is doing their own work, learning how to forgive ourselves, and Huna's got plenty of techniques for that, as well as learning how to forgive others. Whether you use Ho'oponopono or some other process, it doesn't really matter. It's learning how to forgive other people. So forgiveness within, self-forgiveness, and forgiveness without. For all of us, whether we're CEOs or whoever we are, that is such an important starting point, because it is liberating and empowering. And when you're in a zone of liberation, a place of empowerment, it becomes so much easier to empower other people. I know that, I was bullied very badly at school, and I did a lot of work, and I thought I'd resolved it. And I started with Huna, and one of the first things I did with Huna was forgive all the bullies. And I didn't realize, and this was Huna before I started going to Hawaii. And then I was a management consultant at the time. I went to I was working with a team, and I got bullied by the client team. They wouldn't talk to me. They would only talk to somebody else from our organization to talk to me. And I realized at that point, because I thought, how am I? I've done all this work. How am I experiencing this all over again? And the patterns of behavior they were demonstrating were just repeat patterns. All the practices were repeat practices. How am I? I've done this work. And I realized that I hadn't done all the work. I was still holding on to bits and pieces, areas where I was still bitter, areas where I still wasn't quite willing to let go. And when I chose to let go and decided, yes, it was time to let go, it was time to forgive everybody that might have hurt me or wronged me, it changed everything. It really changed everything. It changed my relationships with other clients. That organization I didn't want any more to do with, but it changed my relationship with other clients. It changed my relationship with myself. It changed my relationship with students. It changed the way I teach. It changed so much.
And this just brings up the whole concept that, when hardships, setbacks, obstacles, challenges show up in our life, when we're willing to courageously, take the time, make the effort to go inward and release that baggage, forgive what needs to be forgiven, find harmony within, then naturally our perceptions change, our approach, our attitudes, our energy changes, and things on the outside change as well. And so I wonder if you'd be willing, Jane, to perhaps guide us through something for our listeners or our viewers to have an experience of that, whether it's an experience of self-forgiveness or forgiveness of other, because I imagine that many of us are holding on to something that's ready to be released.
Okay. Yeah, we can do. I can take you through a Ho'oponopono process if that would be okay. The one thing I would say is that with forgiveness takes a nanosecond. It's that. What takes all the time is the getting to the point where you decide that you're willing to forgive and wanting to forgive. That's what takes the time. The actual process is minutes, seconds, nanoseconds. You also, if you're not ready to forgive somebody, you're not ready to forgive them, then give yourself a break and just, okay, I'm not ready. But be aware that you're not ready, and then do the work to understand why you're not ready and what the benefits would be of forgiveness, because it is liberating and empowering, and that is just so important. And the third thing is, for this process, for your listeners, I often do it I get people who work with groups. But what I suggest for this process is choose somebody who's relatively easy for you to forgive. Don't go for the worst trauma you ever had. You can, but come back to the recording later and listen again and do the worst trauma you ever had. But if it's the first time that you've ever done this, then find somebody or a person. Usually you can forgive pets as well. You can forgive children. Children often need a bit of forgiving. But find somebody who it's relatively easy for you to forgive, so that you can relax and enjoy the process. So that would be my preamble. So that having been said, then just go ahead and close your eyes and just get comfortable, whether you're sitting or standing or lying. However, and if you're driving, then save this until you get home. So just get comfortable, and we'll just do a little bit of what we call ha breathing, just to bring preparation and clarity and relaxation, because this particular approach to breathing harnesses the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your relax system. So it relaxes you. And the way you do it is you breathe in through the nose and you breathe out through the mouth. And the out breath is twice as long as the in breath. And we'll do that for maybe a minute or so. So just breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in, out, and in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. And we'll take 3 more of those. In, out, in, out, in, out. And you can either keep breathing like that or go back to normal breathing. I'll go back to normal breathing because it's difficult to speak and breathe like that. So otherwise I'd be continuing. So just go ahead and imagine opening your crown chakra. That's the very top of your head. And a light energy, a healing, light, white energy coming from source and coming in through your crown chakra and filling up your entire body with love, light, healing energy. And imagine that flow of energy getting bigger and bigger and filling you up more and more completely until you are so completely filled up. And as you allow that energy to flow, imagine a stage. It's your stage, so it can be whatever shape you want, round, square, half shape. It can be whatever size you want, and whatever color you want. And imagine it way down beneath you. It's as if you were up in the gods looking down at your stage. And invite somebody who you would like to forgive onto the stage. Might be somebody, or it might be a pet. Invite them onto the stage. Somebody who you know you need to forgive, and you're willing and ready to do so. And as you see them on the stage with your mind's eye, or maybe you feel it with your mind senses, or maybe you just hear it, smell it, taste it. We all experience these things in different ways. Maybe you just have some awareness, and it's not really in any of the senses. But just experience that stage with that person on it, and fill yourself with this healing energy and allow it to flow out of your heart and heal them up too. Allow it to flow to the stage and the person on the stage and heal that up too. So you're all feeling healed. And then when you're ready, say to them, please forgive me. I forgive you. Now, it may be that you're thinking, I have nothing to forgive them for. But we never know whether a glance or a joke we made, something we did unintentionally, that we unintentionally hurt them in some way or affected them in some way. We never know what it is, how it is other people have responded to us, and they would need to forgive us. So I forgive you. Please forgive me. And get the forgiveness both ways. Get that knowingness that you've forgiven them and they have forgiven you. And if you need to kuka, talk story, say to them what you need to say so you can forgive them, and have them say to you what they need to say to you so that they can forgive you. And after all, it's all in your mind anyway. So let the forgiveness and the healing happen. Just take a moment to notice. And notice how, as you forgive, your body may relax, or you may feel more energy, or you may feel a shift in energy. You may even feel a little tired because holding on to all that stuff for such a long time can really exhaust the body. So just notice what your shifts. And then take a look at your stage and ask them to stand to one side. And as you look at the stage, notice whether there are any dark spots on the stage. And if there are any dark spots on the stage, just imagine taking a huge, soft, energetic brush or broom and sweeping the stage, and sweeping the dark spots away. And I'll also send a guide to help you do that, to clear the stage. Clear it now. And as the stage clears, as soon as it's cleared, just allow it to dissolve away. And then bring to mind your person, or the personal pet that you're forgiving. Bring them to mind. And as you bring them to mind, start to notice the cords of connection that link the two of you. In Hawaiian, they call them the aka cords. They're energetic cords of connection. And you may see them, you may feel them, you may hear them, smell them, taste them. But imagine those cords of connection. Imagine gathering up those cords of connection in both hands. And then a laser blade of light coming down from source and cutting all the cords of connection, knowing that anytime you want to reconnect, you can, just by thinking about them or speaking to them or touching them. You can reconnect. And if you don't want to reconnect, then you can just leave it as it is. Cutting the cords. So as you cut the cords now, know that if you do choose to reconnect, it's in a new context. The old history is done, and we're now in a new context, new way of possibility, new way of having a relationship with that individual. So let the laser blade of light cut all those cords everywhere, all the connections to you anywhere. And as the cords are cut, just see the ends start to dissolve away and vanish. And as soon as you're done, just take a couple of breaths, or just take a couple of hard breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, and in through the nose and out through the mouth, and in through the nose and out through the mouth. And you may want to wriggle or shake or move just to get the energy moving again. Bring yourself back into the body, back into your room, back into your body, back into your room, back into the here and now and the present. And be fully back.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you from my heart, Jane. That was really powerful for me. There were some people that I don't personally know that have done some very bad things. And I was able to find some forgiveness in my heart and to cut that cord.
Brilliant.
That has gone on, I imagine, for many generations. So I thank you. This was so powerful. And I invite our listeners and our viewers, if they feel called to come back to this and repeat it. In my experience, there is a power to repeating this process, and others like it multiple times.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what happens when we do this? What can people expect when they do this work?
I think certainly for me, one of the big things has always been I feel lighter. I feel more at peace, particularly if I've had if there's something big has released. The more you do it, the easier it gets. But of course, we live life. So just because I've forgiven everybody doesn't mean that I haven't got more to forgive. But a lightness, as I said, often more energy, sometimes just a tiredness. I find a lot of the release work that I do with people, one of the first reactions is, I feel so tired, because they've been holding on so tight, and the body just, you need to give your body time to readjust, and your mind and your emotional body, but you need to give yourself time just to kind of I don't know, it's like almost like a shimmying back into shape energetically. But yeah, peace. And another thing that quite often happens when people do the Ho'oponopono process is the person that they've put on the stage will phone them or call them. Particularly, if they're energy sensitive, it quite often happens. I forgave there was a period where I was forgiving my mum a lot. She had dementia, and she would get very vicious, and it hurt, even though I knew she had dementia, and it wasn't, well, it kind of was a bit, it was an exaggeration of behaviors that she'd shown when she was not, before she had dementia. And I would do Ho'oponopono. The next thing I knew, she'd be back in touch again. And it was so interesting that the number of times where, I would forgive her and the phone would ring and there she'd be. So, and that doesn't happen with everybody. It's not everybody's experience, and it doesn't happen with everybody. But it may well happen that the people you've forgiven get back in touch. Yeah. And quite often they will have they feel there's something different. They feel a change in the energy.
Yes. Jane, how can people learn even more about these incredible guided experiences, meditations, visualizations, your trainings that you do? How can they access more of your beautiful work?
So I have two websites. One is easy to say, which is secretartofhuna.com. And the other is just my name, drjanelewis.com. I also have a YouTube channel, and I've got a lot of videos with different Huna approaches and other stuff, but a lot of Huna, which is Secret Art of Huna. That's the name of the YouTube channel. And then you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm Jane P. Lewis, Jane P for Patricia Lewis, because there are a lot of Jane Lewises around. It's a common name. It's one of the reasons why I used the doctor title. I mean, I'm entitled to use it, but there are fewer Dr. Jane Lewises than there are Jane Lewises. So, yeah, so you can find me in those places, or email me, jane@drjanelewis.com, if you have a specific question or want to know more.
I just adore you, and I'm so grateful for you and for your fellow Kumus that I have had the pleasure and honor to have studied with. And I thank you for the good work that you do in our world.
Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to be here and spend some time with you.